Hi, everyone. I'm Ivan Bayuki, and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Today, we have a very, very special guest joining us, Dr. Marc Faber, the editor and publisher of the Gloom, Boom, and Doom Report. Welcome back, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your program. It's
Yeah.
always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
This is perfect timing. This is your moment.
Yeah.
Dr. Boom, Dr. Doom, Gloom, and Boom, the chaos in the world. But Ivan, go for it.
So, Dr. Faber, Russia has invaded Ukraine. Everyone forgot about COVID. Commodities are going crazy. Is now the time to panic?
Yes, the timing is incredible because just as COVID was about to fade out, they find something else to distract people's attention from the reality. And the reality is, if you look, we have now a rate of inflation, depending on the household. You have a different household than I have, and so forth, but say between 6 and 12%. Some people will say prices are going up by 12%, and others will say by 5% and so forth, but somewhere in that range. And the Fed, the central bank of the United States, is discussing whether they want to increase interest rates by 0.25% or 0.5%. They are mad. These guys are deranged.
Yeah.
The last time inflation was as high as it is now was in the 70s. And at the time, the Fed fund rate was over 8%. The people at the Fed are like a childish group of people playing in a sandbox. They have no clue.
Yeah.
Or they are deliberately dishonest about the reality of the situation. Now, in my view, they were looking for an excuse somewhere up in the government. I'm not sure the president, I'm not sure the Fed, I'm not sure the Treasury Department, or all together at the same time. But they were kind of looking for an excuse. How can we explain to the public a high rate of inflation? What is better than to find a war? Because of this evil Putin, we have inflation. Putin has very little to do with inflation, but he reinforced the trend because they embargoed him and they imposed all kinds of restrictions, so the prices went up. But you understand, in my view, it's very suspect that we have this this COVID 2020 at the time when the Fed had started to ease monetary policies 6 months earlier in August 2019. But it didn't help much economically. We were in a weak spot in the economy. So then they have COVID. COVID was very bad for small business people and very good for big business people.
Yes, it's true. One of the next areas I want to get into, this is a graph we have of, this is what Russia exports, their percentage share of the total world market: natural gas, wheat, crude oil, aluminum, copper, and lots of other things, palladium. I mean, Russia is a powerhouse for commodities for the world. Are you expecting this to be like a short-term rally, or is this the new normal where it's going to be a long-term issue that we have with Russia in terms of freezing them out of the economy? How long can we go without these commodities coming onto the market?
Well, they're still coming into the market, because you look, say, at the natural gas or oil market. Once oil is in a tank, it's very difficult to determine whether it came from Russia or whether it came from somewhere else. So it's still in the marketplace. Obviously, because of the ban on Russia and its bank to use the SWIFT system, there could be disruptions. I don't think the disruptions will be as bad as Westerners think, but there could be. You have to see one thing clearly. Everybody says, oh, Putin, he miscalculated and so forth. I think that he miscalculated in the uniform response of Western governments. That is a fact. Mm-hmm. That his actions have kind of reunited the NATO. Mm-hmm. Because NATO is not a very strong organization, but his threat has kind of put them together and so forth. And we all don't know what goes on behind the scenes and how much money is being transferred. We also don't know how much money Zelensky receives from the US, from Israel, from other countries, and so we don't know. But in general, I would say, with each dollar increase in the price of oil, Russia stands quite okay. What I think is interesting in this whole situation, if you look at it, the paper currency, the ruble, has collapsed, okay? Mm-hmm. That we all agree. We can all see it on Bloomberg and on other currency tables. But is the ruble that important for Russia, or is the other currency, which is crude oil and natural gas and wheat, more important? I am not so sure the countries will be able to really enforce this expropriation of individuals.
Yeah, I was asking that question also. Under what grounds do we start just taking individuals' property? Unless they're an agent of the state in some way, how do you take someone's private yacht that's just because they happen to have a Russian passport? I don't know.
Yeah. And do you take it with the girlfriends on board, or the boat and the kitchen staff and so forth?
Yeah.
I think it's a very questionable thing to do, to expropriate someone's ship, because the ships, they are not registered in Russia. They have a Panamanian flag or Malta flag or Cyprus or whatever.
When all these other central banks see how easily we've taken away Russia's reserves, half of them, maybe is that pushing them closer to China? Is that accelerating the decline of the US dollar by what we're doing right now, by kicking Russia out of SWIFT, by freezing so many of their assets? Is this a big mistake we're making?
Well, first of all, I don't think they can take half their reserves away, because the dollar holdings in Russian reserves have declined from approximately 50% a few years ago to now only about 5%.
Okay.
So, and number two, the major reserves are in gold of the Russian foreign exchange reserves. And I don't think that the Russians would be this stupid to leave their gold in an American bank or at the Fed. So I don't think they will lose all the foreign exchange reserves. But of course, I agree that they lost a ton of money, A, because the stock market has collapsed, and B, because the currency has collapsed. Now, the thing is this, with the stock market collapse, when you think through it, say BP and also Total, they have holdings in Russia. In the case of BP, British Petroleum, they own, I think, 12 or 20% of Rosneft. And they said they want to sell it. Okay. I think it would be a very interesting proposition, for the Russian central bank, for the Russian government, to buy that stake back at a very distressed level. Number two, it would be a great idea for China to go to Russia and say, look, you have all these assets that are being sold. We are interested to buy them because they could get the reserves at very low cost.
That's true.
So exactly how the whole situation will play out, nobody knows for sure. We just don't know. And also tomorrow there could be a ceasefire. I don't think there will be, because I think once the American decided we get Putin to walk into so-called trap or to start the war, they won't settle for anything that suits Putin right away. You understand? They basically, the aggression is to get Putin out of the way. And Putin, he will not go out of the way, but it's possible that someone in the Kremlin or in Russia knocks him off.
So, Dr. Faber, what everyone wants to know is you're the master, you're the you're the boom, doom, and gloom report guy. How do you position for this situation? I mean, you've been talking about preparing for these types of scenarios for many years. How do we prepare for it?
Well, as I always said, if you look at central banks and if you look at the characters who are at central banks and fix the policy decisions and so forth, I think it would be hard to have any confidence in any of these characters. So my view would be, you have to be your own central bank. And I don't think that right now is the best moment to buy gold. But I think this situation has shown once again, on the eruption of the conflict, stock markets got hit. They got hit everywhere. In some places more, in some places less, but they got hit. And also Bitcoin got hit. And in my view, precious metals offered some stability. Of course, they're also volatile, and sometimes they move up $20 and sometimes they move down $20. But in general, they've fulfilled their position of being stable. Now, there are other commodities that have gone up much more. Wheat is up like 50% in 2 months. And the Fed sits there and says it's transitory. I mean, it's unbelievable, unbelievable. You know, my advice is, I don't think the time is ideal to buy gold here, but I've been buying gold for the last 30, 40 years, every month a little bit. And occasionally I increase the position meaningfully, but I never sold anything at all. These are my reserves, because I do not trust governments. But I have to also say, I don't trust exactly or precisely the custody of my gold. Do you understand? I have in a safe deposit box with banks. If they could seize the properties of the oligarchs, and if they could lock you down, they can also one day say, well, we'll take your gold away. They can also say, we take your Bitcoins away. You understand? They can do a lot of nasty things. I would also say, you understand, not everybody has that good fortune. But I feel reasonably comfortable with having real estate in the countryside, you know, outside big cities, next to a river, ideally, so you have water, but not next to a bridge, because there are many movies about war times and bridges. The tanks have to cross the bridge, and If you have a house next to the bridge, I can tell you the house is gone. But a house far away from socialists, but in the countryside, it's not a good investment as an investment, but it's a safe thing to have in difficult times. Because I'm not sure if you live in New York City or in Hong Kong or in Tokyo or in London, in a difficult situation, the food may not get into the city.
That is true. Yeah, like that, like the whole trucker experience in Canada.
Precisely.
That was a risk.
And
Yeah.
I've seen, this is a very interesting, it was very interesting experience for me. I was in Argentina at the height of the inflation in 1985-86. And I was talking to ordinary people and they say, well, it's very bad because we don't get any food. So I asked, how come? You're the richest agricultural producer in the world. In terms of population, in terms of acreage, it's a very rich agricultural country. But they said, because of the very high inflation, the farmers don't want to sell their products.
Wow.
You understand? Because if you, in a very high inflationary environment, I went once to Brazil. At the beginning of the holidays, I got for $1.03. Halfway through the holidays, it was at 6. By the time I left, it was at 9. The depreciation is so fast. So in those conditions, people don't want cash money. They want to hold on to something. In those difficult times, lots of things become money, like cigarette packs become money because it's easy to transfer. And then the last thing I wanted to say, I always argued for diversification. I think it may not be a bad idea to have some assets in Latin America and maybe some assets in Asia. The Singapore Stock Exchange and the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, especially Hong Kong, is very, very inexpensive at the present time. Because we've been going down since 2015. We're no higher than, say, in 2006. And the property companies are at half book value. Now, the property price may go down, but this is the reason I emphasized at the beginning, the Fed, they cannot increase interest rates a lot, cannot. In Europe, it's the same. All the governments are bankrupt if interest rates go up a lot.
Yeah.
So my sense is that actually inflation will accelerate.
Well, we look forward to talking to you again in the near
Yes,
future,
yes,
sir.
great.
Thank you for joining us. And hopefully
you should interview Mr. Putin.
I sent the invite. He hasn't accepted yet.
Yes.
But
no, you tell him if he can talk with Victoria Nuland.
yeah.